At this time, I'm going to call up Martin Clarke, who is an assistant city attorney, to talk also a little bit about the history of public access television in the city of Atlanta, to also talk about where we are right now as it stands financially. I think there's a lot of questions in the room about that.
Good morning and greetings. I'm Martin Clarke. I think any discussion about the future of public access here in Atlanta has to start with a look at what is the legal history and how did we end up getting here. As mentioned, Charlotte mentioned statewide franchising. Statewide franchising here in Georgia completely changed the landscape. But before that, one of the things that we have to look at prior to statewide franchising actually has to be the FCC rulemaking proceedings in the mid-2000s. That was the precursor to statewide franchising. Now, what does this all mean? The FCC interpreted sections of the Communications Act in a way that restricted the amount and type of support that governments could demand from cable companies. Okay? So that was the precursor. They restricted governments in the application process when telecoms and others applied for franchises, and this was under the guise that they wanted to stimulate competition, okay, in the cable realm. And as a result, P.E.G could only get capital costs rather than operating or non-capital costs. Challenges were brought to those rules. But eventually the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld them. So we ended up in the mid-2000s with a national campaign by telecoms that were getting into the cable realm of statewide franchising. Now, what is statewide franchising? Here in Georgia, statewide franchising was HB 227, sponsored by Senator David Schaefer. It was part of a nationwide movement to cut local governments out of the franchising process. So rather than a cable company coming to Macon or Atlanta to negotiate a franchise where we could demand P.E.G support, etc., they cut us out of the process. They allowed the cablers to go with a statewide franchise. They could go to the state, execute an application process rather than coming and negotiating with us. HB 227 did allow an option, though, for them to come to the city. But as a result of the statewide franchising movement, it ended up destroying P.E.G support as we knew it. They no longer were required to provide P.E.G support. Now, what was Atlanta's position on that? We ended up trying to fight it, and in fact, our city council, along with Felicia Moore, who was behind the bill, sponsored Resolution 0367, which was entitled Resolution Expressing Non-Support of HB 227. We did attempt to fight it because we knew at the time that this was not a good thing. Unfortunately, statewide franchising ended up taking over not only here, but also in 20 other states. And as a result, since 2005, we've lost, 100 fantastic P.E.G stations since 2005. It is a hostile realm, to say the least, legally. Unfortunately, the Communications Act did not define capital costs or service costs of the city and P.E.G. and so that city and P.E.G. advocates are now stuck fighting for support with the presence of HB 227, statewide franchising and FCC rules that appear to support cable and telecom companies. We do have, however, one Hail Mary left. And that is H.R. 1746, which is entitled the Communication Access Preservation Act, which is a bipartisan sponsored law which we are hoping will be enacted, which would allow local jurisdictions to pass state laws to require cable companies to do a number of things, the most important of which, people, is to provide PEG support equal to or greater than what they historically supported prior to the statewide franchise movement. There are different possible permutations of the support. One says what you paid prior to the statewide franchising rules, you will continue them again. Another says 2% of gross cable revenues, and this will not be included in the franchise fees that they currently pay, so it's above and beyond. It also prohibits cablers from charging for set-top boxes to get PEG. Signal distribution should then be without the need for boxes. It removes the capital, non-capital cost distinctions as well that are restricting our ability to draw PEG support. It would require closed captioning and therein ensure parity in the quality of the signal with which you are currently broadcasting. It also changes the definition of cable service without having to worry about how that protocol is used. Again, the landscape completely changed with statewide franchising. Once the state legislature passed those rules, PEG support had forever changed. And we are hoping that the federal government will step in and pass H.R. 1746, which should provide a change in the realm of PEG support.
Thank you, Martin, for that overview of the history of public access television in the state of Georgia.